The sound of his laughter didn't just fill the courtroom, it curdled the air. Richard Sterling, a man who owned half the skyline of Chicago, looked at his trembling wife, Anna, and chuckled as she stood up to dismiss her attorney. He thought he had already won. He thought she was just the quiet housewife he'd controlled for 15 years. But Richard made a fatal calculation that day. He forgot that before she was a mother, before she was a victim, she was something else entirely. What happened next didn't just silence his laughter. It made the stenographer gasp and the judge drop his gavel. This is the story of the day the prey became the predator. The Honorable Judge Harrison P. Miller was not a man known for his patience. Sitting high on the mahogany bench of Courtroom 4B in the Cook County Circuit Court, he looked down over the rim of his spectacles with the weariness of a man who had seen too many divorces and not enough justice. "Mrs. Sterling," Judge Miller said, his voice grating like gravel, "do I understand this correctly? You wish to dismiss Mr. Henderson? We are 5 minutes into opening statements." Anna Sterling stood alone at the defendant's table. She wore a simple charcoal suit, bought off the rack at a department store 3 years ago. It hung slightly loose on her frame, a testament to the weight she had lost over the last 6 months of hell. Her hands, resting on the polished oak table, were shaking, not violently, but with a fine, persistent tremor that she tried to hide by clasping them together. Across the aisle, Richard Sterling leaned back in his leather chair. He was the picture of unassailable power. His suit was a bespoke Italian cut, midnight blue, costing more than Anna's first car. He whispered something to his attorney, Marcus Thorne, a man known in Chicago legal circles as the Butcher, and then Richard did it. He laughed. It wasn't a loud guffaw. It was a low, dismissive chuckle, a sound wet with condescension. It was the sound a boot makes when it steps on an insect. "Your Honor," Marcus Thorne stood up, smoothing his silk tie. "With all due respect to Mrs. Sterling, this is a complex financial case involving assets in the 9 figures. If she dismisses her counsel now, she is essentially forfeiting her defense. My client, Mr. Sterling, just wants to finalize this so everyone can move on. Perhaps a mental health evaluation is in order before she makes such a rash decision." Richard smirked, tapping his gold fountain pen against the table. The rhythm was maddening. Tap, tap, tap. Anna took a breath. She could smell the stale coffee on Mr. Henderson's breath as he leaned away from her, packing his briefcase. He was a court-appointed lawyer, overworked and underprepared, who had told her just that morning to take the settlement. "Take the condo and the stipend, Anna," he had said. "Richard will bury you if you fight." She looked at Richard. For 15 years, that man had defined her reality. He had told her what to wear, who to speak to, and what to think. He had convinced the world that he was the benevolent philanthropist, and she was the fragile, lucky wife. "Mrs. Sterling?" the judge pressed, his eyebrows knitting together. "I need an answer." Anna's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, Your Honor." "Speak up, please," the court reporter requested, fingers hovering over the steno machine. Anna closed her eyes for a split second. She remembered the night Richard had locked her out of their Lakeshore Drive penthouse in the freezing rain because she'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. She remembered the way he smiled when he told their friends she was confused again. She opened her eyes. The tremor in her hands stopped. "Yes, Your Honor," Anna said, her voice clear, resonating off the high ceiling. "I am dismissing Mr. Henderson. I will be representing myself." Richard let out a louder laugh this time, shaking his head. "Oh, this is rich," he muttered, loud enough for the front row to hear. "Quiet, Mr. Sterling," Judge Miller snapped, though he looked back at Anna with pity. Ma'am, I am required to warn you. You are going up against a senior partner from Vance and Hart. The rules of evidence are strict. I cannot help you. If you make a mistake, you will live with the consequences. Are you absolutely certain? I am certain. Very well. The judge sighed, scribbling on his notepad. Mr. Henderson, you are excused. Mrs. Sterling, since you are now pro esse, you may deliver your opening statement. You have 10 minutes. The room went deadly silent. The air conditioning hummed, a low drone of tension. Richard leaned over to Marcus Thorne. Watch this, he whispered. She can't even order dinner without asking me first. She's going to crumble in 2 minutes. Anna walked out from behind the table. She didn't walk to the podium. Instead, she walked toward the jury box. Though there was no jury, only the empty seats, as this was a bench trial. She turned to face the judge, then pivoted to look directly at Richard. She held nothing. No notes, no legal pad, no water. 15 years ago, Anna began, her voice steady, possessing a strange, melodic cadence that seemed out of place in the sterile courtroom. I met Richard Sterling at a fundraising gala for the chaotic arts. He was charming, he was ambitious, and he told me that he wanted a partner. Marcus Thorne stood up, looking bored. Objection? Relevance? We are here to divide assets, not take a walk down memory lane. Overruled, Judge Miller said, leaning forward. It's an opening statement, Mr. Thorne. I'll allow some latitude. Continue, Mrs. Sterling. He told me he wanted a partner, Anna continued, locking eyes with Richard. But what he really wanted was a vault. Richard's smile faltered slightly, his brow furrowed. Vault? What was she talking about? A vault to hide things in, Anna said, pacing slowly toward the plaintiff's table. You see, Your Honor, Mr. Thorne is right. This is a complex financial case, but not because the assets are difficult to calculate. It is complex because they do not exist where they say they exist. She stopped 3 feet from Richard. The smell of his cologne, sandalwood, and expensive arrogance wafted toward her. It used to make her heart race with fear. Now, it just smelled like rot. My husband is asking for full custody of our children and an 80-20 split of the marital assets, claiming that his business, Sterling Dynamics, is currently operating at a loss due to market volatility. He claims our liquidity is low. He claims I am an unstable spendthrift. She turned back to the judge. But Mr. Sterling has made a critical error. He assumes that because I have been a stay-at-home mother for a decade, I have ceased to be a person of intellect. He assumes that while he was in his office, I was merely painting my nails or attending luncheons. Anna walked back to her table and picked up a single, thick manila envelope. She didn't open it. She just set it down on the edge of the judge's bench with a heavy thud. Mr. Sterling forgot, Anna said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming ice-cold. He forgot that before I was Anna Sterling, I was Anna Vance. A ripple of confusion went through the courtroom. Judge Miller froze. He looked at the paperwork in front of him, then up at Anna. Vance? As in Vance and Hart? Richard's face went pale. The blood drained out of his cheeks so fast it looked like a physical blow. He gripped the armrests of his chair. Yes, Your Honor, Anna said. My maiden name is Vance. My father founded the firm that currently represents my husband. She pointed a finger at Marcus Thorne, who was now staring at her with his mouth slightly open. Mr. Thorne was a junior associate when I was finishing my residency at Forensic Accounting, Anna revealed. He probably doesn't remember me. I was in the back archives most of the time. But I remember him. She turned back to Richard. The silence in the room was now suffocating. The air felt thin. "I haven't practiced law in 15 years, Richard," she said softly. "But I didn't lose my license, and I certainly didn't lose my ability to read a balance sheet." "Objection!" Thorne shouted, his voice cracking. This is prejudicial. She is grandstanding." "Sit down, Mr. Thorne," Judge Miller barked, his eyes glued to Anna. "You laughed when I stood up, Richard," Anna said, taking a step closer to him again. "You laughed because you thought you were fighting a wife. But you're not. You're fighting a forensic accountant who has had access to your home office, your trash, and your unencrypted cloud backups for the last 3 years. Richard stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "She's lying, Sit down, Mr. Sterling." The bailiff took a step forward, hand on his belt. Anna didn't flinch. "In this trial, Your Honor, I will not only prove that Sterling Dynamics is profitable, I will prove that Richard has been funneling marital assets into shell companies in the Cayman Islands and, more interestingly, into a private LLC registered under the name of his mistress." The gasp from the gallery was audible. "But that is not the twist, Your Honor," Anna said, a small, dangerous smile touching her lips, the first time she had smiled in months. "The twist is that I didn't just find the money." She tapped the manila envelope on the judge's bench. "I moved it." Richard's eyes bulged. "You what?" he whispered. "I moved it," Anna repeated. "Every time you transferred funds to Project Blue or Orion Holdings, I was there, mirroring the transactions. You thought you were hiding money from me? No, Richard. You were handing it to me." She looked up at the judge. "Opening statement concluded, Your Honor." The courtroom was absolutely silent for 5 full seconds. Judge Miller looked at the envelope, then at Richard Sterling, who looked like he was having a cardiac event, and finally at Anna, who stood tall, the tremors in her hands completely gone. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Miller said, his voice unusually high, "call your first witness, if you can." The tension in courtroom 4B had shifted so violently that the air felt pressurized. Marcus Thorne, the butcher, looked as though he'd been slapped with a wet fish. He shuffled his papers, his hands betraying a nervousness that never usually pierced his armor. He leaned in to whisper to Richard. "Is it true?" Thorne hissed. Is she that Vance?" Richard was staring at Anna, his eyes wide and unblinking. I don't know. She never talks about her family. Her dad died years ago. I thought they were estranged." "You idiot," Thorne muttered. He stood up, buttoning his jacket, trying to regain the alpha dominance that usually won him cases before lunch. "Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Mr. Arthur Pimsley to the stand." Anna sat calmly at her table. She pulled a fresh notepad from her bag and uncapped a simple black pen. She wrote one word: diversion. Arthur Pimsley was Richard's chief financial officer. A mousy man with spectacles thick enough to see into the future, he waddled to the stand, clutching a handkerchief. He looked at Richard for reassurance, but Richard was too busy staring at the back of his wife's head, trying to figure out when the woman who baked scones had become this. "Mr. Pimsley," Thorne began, pacing the floor, "can you describe the current financial state of Sterling Dynamics?" "Yes, sir," Pimsley squeaked. "It is dire. The market shift in microconductors has left us with significant overhead. We are bleeding cash. Mr. Sterling has actually forgone his salary for the last 2 quarters to keep the lights on." Thorne nodded solemnly. "So, the allegation that Mr. Sterling is hiding millions is preposterous," Pimsley said, gaining a little confidence. "The money simply isn't there. The ledgers are open. We are nearly bankrupt." "Thank you. No further questions." Thorne sat down, shooting a smug look at Anna. Let's see you handle a CFO, his eyes said. Anna stood up. She didn't rush. She walked to the podium and placed her hands on the wood. Mr. Pimsley, she said softly. How long have you worked for my husband? 12 years, Mrs. Sterling. And in those 12 years, have you ever signed a document without reading it? Pimsley scoffed. I am a certified public accountant, Mrs. Sterling. I read everything. Good, Anna said. She picked up a document from her table. Exhibit A, Your Honor. Copies for opposing counsel. She handed the papers to the bailiff. Mr. Pimsley, Anna continued. Do you recognize this document? Pimsley squinted at the paper. It appears to be a standard procurement invoice for office supplies from a vendor called Apex Logistics. And the amount? $45,000. A lot of paper clips, wouldn't you say, Mr. Pimsley? It's a large company, Anna nodded. And do you know who owns Apex Logistics? I assume it's a logistics firm. Turn to page 3, please. Pimsley turned the page. His face went grey. Can you read the name of the registered agent for Apex Logistics, Mr. Pimsley? Pimsley swallowed hard. He looked at Richard. Richard was shaking his head slightly, a subtle shut-up motion. I can't quite make it out. It says Arthur Pimsley, Anna read out loud, and the address listed is 42 Oak Creek Lane. That's your mother's house, isn't it, Arthur? The courtroom gasped again. Objection! Thorne shot up. Ambush! We haven't seen this document. It was in the discovery box you sent me, Mr. Thorne, Anna said coolly, not looking away from the witness. File 404, subfolder, MISC. You buried it deep, but you gave it to me. I guess you didn't think I'd look in the MISC folder. Judge Miller leaned forward. Overruled. Answer the question, Mr. Pimsley. It must be a mistake, Pimsley stammered. Sweat was beading on his forehead. A mistake? Anna flipped another page. I have here 12 invoices from Apex Logistics over the last year, totaling $1.2 million, all paid by Sterling Dynamics, all deposited into a bank account at First National. She paused, letting the silence hang. And do you know what happens to the money once it hits that account, Arthur? I take the fifth, Pimsley whispered. You can't take the fifth in a civil divorce trial regarding corporate funds you managed, not without consequences, Judge Miller warned. Anna didn't wait. It gets transferred, within 24 hours, to an account in the name of R.S. Private. She walked up to the witness stand, leaning in close. Arthur, did Richard threaten to fire you if you didn't set this up? Objection, hearsay, speculation, Thorne was yelling now. I'm giving him a lifeline, Your Honor, Anna said, her voice sharp, because if he doesn't answer, he's looking at federal embezzlement charges. But if he was acting under duress from his CEO, Pimsley broke. He made me do it, Pimsley shouted, pointing a shaking finger at Richard. He told me he needed to hide the cash flow before the divorce filing. He said he'd ruin me if I didn't. Richard slammed his fist on the table. You traitorous little rat. Order. Judge Miller banged his gavel. Mr. Sterling, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Mr. Thorne, control your client. Anna stepped back. No further questions. As Pimsley practically ran off the stand, Anna looked at Richard. He wasn't laughing anymore. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. But beneath the rage, Anna saw something she had never seen in him before. Fear. But Anna knew the invoices were just the appetizer. The real devastation was yet to come. She looked at her list of witnesses. She wasn't going to call the banker. She wasn't going to call the accountant. Your Honor, Anna said. The defense calls. Miss Isabella Vane. Richard's head snapped toward the back of the courtroom. The double doors swung open. Walking in was a woman in a stunning red dress, tall, blonde, and impeccably made up. She was beautiful. She was young, and she was the woman Richard had been sleeping with for 2 years. But as Isabella walked down the aisle, she didn't look at Richard with love. She didn't look at him with fear. She looked at Anna, and she winked. Richard's jaw dropped. "What?" he whispered. Anna turned to the judge. "I believe Mr. Sterling knows Miss Vane. But what he doesn't know is that Miss Vane and I have been having coffee every Tuesday for the last 3 months." Isabella Vane took the witness stand with the grace of a runway model and the cold determination of an executioner. The red dress she wore was vibrant, a stark contrast to the sterile beige walls of the courtroom. It was the same red dress Richard had bought her for their anniversary. Their anniversary, not his and Anna's, in Paris 3 months ago. Seeing it now, Richard felt a wave of nausea. "Raise your right hand," the bailiff instructed. Isabella swore to tell the truth. She sat down, crossing her legs, and looked directly at Richard. Her eyes were devoid of the adoration he was used to. There was only steel. "Miss Vane," Anna began, standing near the defense table. She didn't approach the witness stand immediately. She wanted the distance to emphasize the strangeness of the dynamic, the wife and the mistress, united across a courtroom. "Please state your relationship to the plaintiff, Richard Sterling." "I was his personal assistant for 2 years," Isabella said, her voice smooth. "And his lover for the last 18 months, the court stenographer typed furiously. Marcus Thorne didn't bother objecting. The affair was undeniable. His strategy was clearly to paint Isabella as a bitter, discarded lover. "And during this time," Anna continued, "did Richard discuss his financial plans with you?" "Frequently," Isabella nodded. "He liked to brag. He told me that he was starving the beast. That's what he called you, Anna. The beast." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Anna didn't flinch. And how exactly was he starving the beast? He was moving liquid capital out of Sterling Dynamics and into a holding company called Vane Ventures LLC. He told me he named it after me as a romantic gesture. He said it was our freedom fund for when he finally divorced you. Anna walked to her table and picked up a thick binder. Vane Ventures LLC. I have the incorporation papers here. Miss Vane, are you listed as the sole proprietor of this company? I am. And were you aware that Vane Ventures LLC purchased a $4.5 million villa in Tuscany last November? Isabella shook her head. No, I've never been to Tuscany. Were you aware that Vane Ventures purchased $2 million in bearer bonds? No. Anna turned to the judge. Your Honor, Richard Sterling used Miss Vane's identity to launder over $6 million. He set her up as the fall guy. If the IRS came looking, they wouldn't find Richard Sterling. They would find Isabella Vane. Richard's face was purple. He leaned toward Thorne. She signed the papers. She knew. Shut up, Thorne hissed, sweat visible on his upper lip. Anna looked back at Isabella. Miss Vane, when did you realize Richard was setting you up? 3 months ago, Isabella said, when you invited me to coffee. The courtroom went silent again. Tell the court what happened at that meeting, Anna prompted. I expected you to scream at me, Isabella admitted, looking down at her hands. I expected you to throw a drink in my face. Instead, you slid a tax audit across the table. You showed me that I was facing 15 years in federal prison for tax evasion because of the accounts Richard opened in my name. You didn't threaten me, Anna. You offered me a lawyer. Anna nodded slowly. And in exchange? In exchange, I gave you the access codes, Isabella said, lifting her chin. The two-factor authentication dongle for the Cayman accounts. Richard kept it in the safe at his apartment in the city. He thought I didn't know the combination. But he uses the same combination for everything, 0418. Richard audibly gasped. 0418, his birthday. And what did you do with that dongle, Miss Vane? I gave it to you. Thank you. No further questions. Anna turned to sit down, but Marcus Thorne shot up like a jack-in-the-box. Cross-examination, Thorne barked. He marched toward Isabella, his face twisted in a sneer. Miss Vane, isn't it true that you are testifying today because Mrs. Sterling paid you? Isn't this just a shakedown? Isabella laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. Mr. Thorne, Anna didn't pay me a dime. She promised to testify on my behalf when I go to the IRS to claim innocent spouse relief. She saved my life. Richard was going to let me rot in jail while he counted his money on a yacht. You are a scorned woman, Thorne shouted. You are lying to hurt the man who stopped paying for your designer handbags. Mr. Thorne, Judge Miller warned. I'm done with him, Isabella said dismissively, looking past Thorne to Richard. And Richard, you should check your Project Blue folder. It's empty. Thorne looked back at Richard. Richard was frantically typing on his phone under the table. His face went from red to ghost white. The phone clattered from his hands onto the floor. Mr. Sterling, Judge Miller asked. Is there a problem? Richard looked up, his eyes hollow. It's gone, he whispered. It's all gone. The lunch recess was a chaotic affair. The hallway outside courtroom 4B was buzzing. Richard Sterling and Marcus Thorne were huddled in a corner, shouting in hushed tones. Richard looked like a man who had been pushed out of an airplane without a parachute. Inside the courtroom, Anna sat alone, eating an apple. She was calm. The hard part, the emotional part, was over. Now came the surgical part. When court reconvened, Judge Miller looked expectantly at Anna. Mrs. Sterling, you mentioned in your opening statement that you moved the assets. The court is very interested in the legality of this action. I'm happy to explain, Your Honor, Anna said, standing up. I would like to call myself to the stand to present the forensic evidence. Very unusual, Judge Miller muttered. But proceed. You may testify from the podium. Anna set up her laptop. It connected to the large screen facing the courtroom. 3 years ago, Anna began, I noticed a discrepancy in our household budget. Richard claimed we needed to cut back on the children's tuition, yet he had just purchased a new Bentley. When I asked him, he told me I didn't understand cash flow. She clicked a button. The screen flared to life, showing a complex web of bank transfers. Richard was right. I didn't understand his cash flow. So I learned. I spent my nights studying forensic accounting updates and cybersecurity, and I realized that Richard, for all his business acumen, was technologically illiterate. She pointed to the screen. Richard used a single cloud-based server for both Sterling Dynamics and our personal home automation system. He wanted to control the lights and the thermostat from his office. But by linking them, he created a bridge. Richard groaned, putting his head in his hands. I didn't hack his company, Your Honor, Anna said clearly. I didn't have to. I simply logged into our family refrigerator. The judge blinked. Your refrigerator? It's a smart fridge, Your Honor, connected to the family cloud. Richard had synced his Notes app to the family account so he could see the grocery list, but he forgot to unsync his other notes, including a note titled Passphrases. Laughter bubbled up from the back of the room. The irony was suffocating. The great tycoon brought down by a grocery list. Using those passphrases, I was able to monitor the flow of funds into the shell companies Miss Vane mentioned. But I didn't touch the money. Not yet. I waited. Waited for what? Judge Miller asked, fascinated. For the trigger clause, Anna said. Exhibit C. She pulled up a document on the screen. It looked like a standard bank transfer authorization. On December 14th, 2 weeks before filing for divorce, Richard sent me a document to sign. He told me it was a permission slip for our son's school field trip. He sent it via DocuSign. He was in a rush, yelling at me to just click the box. Anna paused. I didn't just click the box. I read the metadata. Richard had attached a hidden rider to the document, attempting to get me to waive my rights to the marital estate. It was a fraudulent attempt to trick me. That is a serious accusation, Thorne interrupted weakly. I have the metadata logs here, Anna said, tapping the key. But here is the twist. I didn't sign his version. I modified the PDF. I kept the school field trip header, but I changed the embedded code. Instead of waiving my rights, the document granted me power of attorney over all accounts linked to the Sterling Family Trust for a period of 48 hours. She looked at Richard. You didn't read it, Richard. You just saw my signature and filed it. You were so arrogant, so sure that I was stupid, that you executed the document yourself. Objection, Thorne screamed. This is entrapment, fraud. It is not fraud to modify a contract before signing it, Mr. Thorne, Judge Miller said, his voice dripping with disdain. It is a counteroffer. Your client accepted the counteroffer when he countersigned and filed it. Exactly, Anna said, and in that 48-hour window, I used my legal power of attorney to consolidate the funds from Vane Ventures, the Cayman accounts, and the hidden crypto wallets. And where is the money now, Mrs. Sterling? The judge asked. Anna clicked the next slide. A bank statement appeared. The header read, Clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County, escrow account. It is here, Your Honor. Every cent. 42 out of $500,000. I didn't steal it. I deposited it with the court to ensure a fair division of assets. The silence that followed was absolute. Anna hadn't stolen the money. She had secured it. She had outplayed him legally, technically, and ethically. Richard Sterling was staring at the screen. The number 42,500,000 seemed to burn into his retinas. He looked at Anna. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't the mouse he had married. She was a lioness who had just brought a gazelle down by the throat. You, Richard stammered, standing up slowly. He looked unhinged. His tie was crooked. You think you're so smart? You think this is over? Sit down, Mr. Sterling. The bailiff moved closer. No, Richard shouted, his voice cracking. She hacked me. She used the fridge. This is illegal. I am Richard Sterling. I built this city. He lunged toward the aisle, not at Anna, but toward the exit. He was running. Stop him, Judge Miller shouted. But Richard didn't get far. As he pushed through the swinging wooden gate, the double doors at the back of the courtroom opened. 2 men in dark suits stood there. They weren't bailiffs. They wore windbreakers with 3 yellow letters on the back. FBI. Anna looked at Richard, who had frozen in his tracks. Oh, Anna said into the microphone, her voice calm. I forgot to mention one last thing. While I was reviewing the ledgers, I found some transactions that didn't belong to us. Payments to a certain zoning commissioner? Richard turned back to look at her, his eyes wide with horror. I didn't want to be an accessory to bribery, Richard, Anna said softly. So I forwarded those particular files to the Department of Justice last week. The lead FBI agent stepped forward, handcuffs glinting under the courtroom lights. Richard Sterling, you are under arrest for wire fraud, bribery of a public official, and money laundering. Richard slumped, The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. He looked at Anna one last time. "Why?" he croaked. "I gave you everything." Anna looked him dead in the eye. "You gave me a cage, Richard. I just found the key." As they cuffed him and led him away, Marcus Thorne began shoving papers into his briefcase, trying to disappear. The courtroom was in chaos. Reporters were shouting. The judge was banging his gavel. But Anna just stood there, taking a deep breath. For the first time in 15 years, the air tasted sweet. But as the heavy doors closed behind Richard, Anna's phone buzzed on the podium. It was a text message. Sender: unknown. "Well played, Anna. But you missed one account, and he's not the only one who wants it back." Anna stared at the screen. The tremors in her hands threatened to return. The story wasn't over. Richard was gone, but someone else was watching. The adrenaline that had sustained Anna through the trial evaporated the moment she stepped out of the courthouse and into the biting Chicago wind. Reporters swarmed like gnats, their microphones thrust into her face, shouting questions about the $42 million, about Richard's arrest, about the mistress. Anna ignored them, flanked by 2 court officers who escorted her to her beat-up sedan. She sat in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the wheel until her knuckles turned white. She stared at the phone sitting in the passenger seat. He's not the only one who wants it back. Who? Richard was a narcissist, a bully, and a crook. But he wasn't a mastermind. Anna had always suspected that someone else held the leash. Someone who had guided Richard from a mid-level manager to a titan of industry. Richard lacked the discipline for the kind of complex laundering she had uncovered. He was the face. Someone else was the brain. Anna drove not to her house, but to a 24-hour internet cafe in a run-down neighborhood near O'Hare Airport. She needed a connection that wasn't tied to her home IP address. She pulled her hood up, paid in cash, and sat in a back corner booth. She opened her laptop and logged back into the mirror of Richard's server she had saved on an external hard drive. She had scrubbed the financials clean for the court, but she had kept the raw data. She ran a search for Account 00, the phantom account implied by the text message. Nothing. She tried Shadow, Reserve, Emergency. Nothing. Then she remembered something Isabella had said on the stand. He said it was our Freedom Fund. Anna typed in Libertas. The screen flickered. A hidden partition in the drive unlocked. It wasn't a bank account. It was a directory of video files and scanned PDFs. Anna clicked the first file. It was a video. The timestamp was 3 years ago. The setting was a dimly lit office. Richard was there, laughing, handing a thick envelope to a man whose face was obscured by shadow. "The zoning permits for the stadium are secure, Mr. Blackwood," Richard said in the video. "The mayor is on board. We just need the union to look the other way regarding the concrete quality." The man in the shadow leaned forward. "The concrete will hold long enough for the checks to clear, Richard. Just make sure your wife doesn't ask why the foundation costs are so low." Anna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty cafe. Julian Blackwood. The name was a ghost story in Chicago, a consultant for major construction firms, political campaigns, and offshore banks. He had no official title, no office, and no criminal record. He was the man you called when you needed a problem to disappear or a law to bend until it broke. Anna realized with horror that the $42 million she had seized wasn't just Richard's money. It was Blackwood's operating capital for a massive, illegal development project on the South Side, and she had just handed it to the clerk of the court. Her phone buzzed again. "Unknown. You're looking at the files. Good. Now you know the price of admission. Meet me at the Adler Planetarium, midnight. Come alone, or the next video I release will be of your children walking to school." Anna slammed the laptop shut. Panic, hot and sharp, pierced her chest. She had prepared to fight a husband. She hadn't prepared to fight a monster. She called the only person she could trust, the only person who had as much to lose as she did. "Isabella," Anna said when the line picked up. "Anna, I saw the news. We did it. Richard is the least of our problems," Anna cut her off. "I need you to pick up the kids from my mother's house. Take them to that cabin your aunt owns in Wisconsin. Don't stop for gas. Don't use your credit cards." "What? Why?" Isabella's voice dropped, trembling. "Because we stole from Julian Blackwood," Anna whispered, "and he wants a refund. Midnight in Chicago is never truly dark. The light pollution paints the sky a bruised purple. The Adler Planetarium sat on a peninsula jutting out into Lake Michigan, the wind whipping off the water with the force of a physical blow. Anna stood by the statue of Copernicus, her coat pulled tight. She looked small against the backdrop of the skyline, but inside her coat pocket, her hand rested on a dead man's switch she had rigged together in the last 3 hours. A black limousine rolled up the access road, its headlights cutting through the gloom. It stopped 20 feet from her. The rear door opened. Julian Blackwood stepped out. He was an older man, perhaps 60, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He wore a camel hair coat and leaned on a cane with a silver handle. He didn't look like a thug. He looked like a grandfather. That made him terrifying. "Mrs. Sterling," Blackwood said, his voice smooth and cultured. "Or should I say, Miss Vance? Your father was a good attorney. He knew when to settle." "My father died of a heart attack at 55 because of the stress men like you put on him," Anna replied, her voice steady despite the gale-force wind. "Stress is a choice, Anna," Blackwood said, limping closer. 2 large men in trench coats got out of the car and stood by the hood, watching. "Just like poverty, just like safety. You made a choice today. You chose to be a hero. I chose to protect my family. By stealing $40 million of my liquidity." Blackwood chuckled. "Richard was a fool. He was sloppy. I was going to cut him loose anyway. But you complicate things. That money is currently frozen in a court escrow account. I need you to unfreeze it." "I can't," Anna said. "It's evidence now." "You have power of attorney," Blackwood countered. "You modified the document. You can file an emergency motion to retract the deposit, claiming an accounting error. You can wire it to a new account. My account." "And if I don't?" Blackwood sighed. "Anna, I don't want to be unpleasant, but I know where your children go to school. I know where your mother plays bingo. Accidents happen. Gas leaks. Brake failures." Anna stared at him. The wind stung her eyes. She thought of her children, safe with Isabella in Wisconsin. She thought of the 15 years she had spent being afraid of Richard. She was done being afraid. "You're right, Mr. Blackwood," Anna said, taking a step forward. "Accidents do happen, like the accident of a server crash." Blackwood frowned. "Excuse me? You think I came here to negotiate?" Anna pulled her hand out of her pocket. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding a small remote trigger, the kind used for garage doors. "I linked Richard's Libertas folder, the one with the videos of you bribing the mayor and the union chief, to a cloud-based dispersal program." Blackwood's face hardened. The grandfatherly mask slipped. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Anna held up the remote. "This trigger resets a timer. I have to press it every 12 hours. If I don't, if I disappear, if I have an accident, the timer hits 0. And every news outlet from the New York Times to Al Jazeera gets a link to your private video collection." The silence stretched, broken only by the crashing waves. "You are blackmailing me," Blackwood said, a note of admiration creeping into his voice. "I'm engaging in mutually assured destruction," Anna corrected. "Forensic accounting isn't just about finding money, Julian. It's about finding leverage." Blackwood stared at her for a long time. He looked at the remote in her hand. He looked at the skyline of the city he practically owned. He realized that the woman standing before him wasn't a housewife. She was a burning match standing next to a powder keg. "What do you want?" Blackwood asked quietly. "I want you to leave my family alone." "Forever," Anna said. "I want you to wipe any debt Richard owed you, and I want you to make sure Richard stays in prison. If he gets out on bail, if he gets a reduced sentence, the timer hits 0. Blackwood let out a short, sharp laugh. "You want me to be your jailer?" "I want you to be my guarantor," Anna said. "You control the judges. You control the system. Use that power to keep Richard locked away, because if he comes near me, I burn you down." Blackwood tapped his cane on the pavement. Clack, clack, clack. "Very well," he said finally. "The money in the escrow account. Let the state keep it. It's a tax write-off. Consider Richard's debt paid." He turned back to the car. "One piece of advice, Mrs. Sterling," Blackwood said, pausing at the door. "If you ever decide to get back into the legal profession, call me. I could use someone with your specific set of skills." "Go to hell, Julian," Anna said. "We're already there, my dear. We're just rearranging the furniture." Blackwood got into the car. The engine purred, and the limousine reversed, turning around and disappearing into the night. Anna stood alone in the dark. She didn't press the button on the remote. She didn't have to. The remote was for her garage door. There was no dead man's switch. There was no timer. She had bluffed the most dangerous man in Chicago with a garage opener and a confident lie. Her knees finally gave out, and she sank to the ground, sobbing, not from sadness, but from the sheer, overwhelming release of survival. She had won. But the story wasn't quite over. There was one loose end, one person who had been silent through the trial, watching from the shadows of the courtroom, whom Anna hadn't noticed until she reviewed the tapes. Her mother-in-law. 3 days after the confrontation at the planetarium, the noise finally stopped. Richard had been denied bail, deemed a massive flight risk given his hidden, and now seized, assets. The FBI raids on Sterling Dynamics had ceased, the agents carting away boxes of evidence that Anna knew would only confirm what she had already given them. Isabella was back in the city, finalizing her immunity deal and planning to open a small bakery, her actual dream before Richard turned her into a corporate accessory. Anna was staying at her mother's modest 2-bedroom house in the suburbs. The silence was jarring. For 15 years, her life had been noise. Richard's demands, Richard's parties, Richard's volatile moods. Now there was just the hum of her mother's old refrigerator, a comforting, non-smart appliance that couldn't spy on her. She was drinking tea, watching her children play in the backyard, when a courier arrived. He didn't drive a marked van. He drove a sleek, black sedan. He handed Anna a single envelope made of thick, textured cream paper. There was no return address, just a wax seal imprinted with an ornate S. Inside was a single card, Stonehaven Estate, Lake Geneva. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Don't be late. It wasn't a request. It was a summons from the only person Richard had ever truly feared. His mother, Constance Sterling. Anna had only met Constance a handful of times in 15 years. Constance disapproved of Richard marrying a Vance. She considered forensic accountants to be little more than glorified tradespeople. She had skipped the wedding, sending a baccarat crystal vase instead. She was the matriarch of the old sterling money that predated Richard's flashy tech ventures by 3 generations. She lived in seclusion, pulling strings that few people even knew existed. Anna considered ignoring it. She had defeated the husband, neutralized the mistress, and outbluffed the mobster. Why walk into the lion's den now? But curiosity and a lingering sense that the board wasn't quite clear drove her to accept. The next day, Anna drove her rented Ford Focus through the wrought-iron gates of Stonehaven. The estate was massive, a sprawling stone mansion built in the 1920s, designed to intimidate rather than welcome. A butler showed her into the library. The room smelled of ancient leather, cigar smoke, and dried lavender. Sitting by the fireplace in a high-backed wing chair was Constance Sterling. At 78, she was frail physically, but her eyes were as sharp and cold as diamonds. She didn't stand when Anna entered. She just gestured to the chair opposite her, with a hand weighed down by antique rings. "You look tired, Anna," Constance said. Her voice was low, raspy, like dry leaves blowing over pavement. "It's been a long week, Constance," Anna replied, not taking the seat immediately. She stood tall, refusing to be subordinate in this room. Constance allowed a ghost of a smile. "Sit down, girl. You've earned the right to sit in this house." Anna sat, keeping her back straight. "Why am I here? If you want to threaten me for what I did to your son, save your breath. Julian Blackwood already tried." Constance let out a sharp cackle. "Julian, a useful brute but lacks imagination. And Richard—" Her face darkened, not with sadness but with distaste. "Richard was a disappointment long before you married him. He was loud, he was sloppy. He mistook spending money for having power." Anna frowned, confused. "You're not angry that I put him in federal prison?" "Angry?" Constance leaned forward, her eyes glittering. "My dear, I'm relieved. Richard was hemorrhaging the family reputation with his tawdry affairs and his clumsy laundering. I was going to have to cut him off anyway. You saved me the trouble." She reached for a porcelain teacup, her hand trembling slightly. "I watched the trial feeds," Constance murmured. "The refrigerator hack? Ingenious. The modified DocuSign? Elegant. And bluffing Julian Blackwood with a garage door opener." She looked up at Anna with genuine respect. That, Anna, was pure sterling. The air in the room seemed to shift. "You didn't just defeat my son," Constance said softly. "You audited him. You dismantled him piece by piece, using his own arrogance as leverage. It was the most competent thing anyone carrying the Sterling name has done in 20 years. "I'm not a Sterling anymore," Anna said coldly. "As soon as the paperwork goes through, I'm Anna Vance again." "Names are just labels on assets," Constance waved her hand dismissively. "What matters is capability, and I am dying, Anna." The admission hung in the air. "Cancer. 6 months at best," Constance stated factually. "And I have a problem. The Sterling Trust. The real money. Not the peanuts Richard was playing with in Sterling Dynamics. Needs a steward. It's worth billions. It controls real estate, shipping lanes, agricultural interests. It requires someone ruthless, intelligent, and financially forensic to manage it." She looked pointedly at Anna. "You want me to run the family trust?" Anna whispered, stunned. "After I destroyed your son?" "Because you destroyed him," Constance corrected. "You proved you have the killer instinct he lacked. You understand leverage. You understand silence. You understand that the real game isn't played in courtrooms, it's played in the margins of ledgers." Constance reached into a small wooden box next to her chair. She pulled out a heavy gold signet ring, worn smooth by time. "Richard never wore this. He wasn't worthy of it. The trust is currently being managed by a board of grey old men who are terrified of me. When I die, they will loot it. She held the ring out toward Anna. Take the helm, Anna. Not as Richard's wife. As his replacement. Run the empire. Secure your children's future not with a measly 40 million, but with a dynasty. Anna stared at the ring. It was everything she had fought to escape. It was the symbol of the cage she had just broken out of, but as she looked at it, she realized something. Richard's cage had been built of ignorance and fear. This was power. Pure, undiluted capability. She thought about Blackwood out there, rearranging his furniture. She thought about the other predators in the world who would see a single mother with $40 million as a target. Then she thought about herself standing in that courtroom, the adrenaline coursing through her veins as she outsmarted them all. She hadn't hated the fight. She had loved it. Anna Vance, the quiet accountant who baked scones, was dead. Richard had killed her years ago. The woman who remained was something else entirely. Anna reached out and took the heavy gold ring. It was cold against her skin. On one condition, Anna said, her voice steel. Name it, Constance said, her eyes gleaming. The trust gets cleaned up. No more Blackwoods. No more bribes. We make money the hard way, by being smarter than everyone else. Constance Sterling smiled, a real, terrifying smile that showed all her teeth. Oh, my dear, the old woman whispered. I was hoping you'd say that. Welcome to the family. Anna walked out of Stonehaven an hour later. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the estate that was now, effectively, hers to command. She thought back to that first moment in Courtroom 4B. The moment Marcus Thorne made his opening statement and Richard leaned back in his chair and chuckled. He had laughed because he thought she was weak. He had laughed because he thought he knew the rules of the game. Anna slid the heavy gold signet ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Richard was right about one thing. It was funny. But as she started the engine of her cheap rental car, leaving the past behind to claim her future, Anna knew the truth that Richard had learned too late. She always had the last laugh. Wow. Just wow. From a victim of financial abuse to the head of a billion-dollar dynasty. Anna didn't just win the divorce. She executed a hostile takeover of the entire family empire. Richard is in a cell, and the woman he laughed at is now wearing the crown. It's the ultimate revenge story, because she didn't just survive him, she replaced him. This story proves that you should never underestimate someone just because they've stayed silent. Sometimes they aren't being passive, they're just gathering data. If this saga kept you on the edge of your seat, please smash that like button. Let's get this video to 10,000 likes for Anna's victory. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell, because we have another unbelievable real-life drama coming next week that you do not want to miss. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Anna made the right choice taking over the Sterling Trust? Or should she have walked away completely? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.